Hi everyone, my name is Julie Riley. I'm the director of the LASARD project. Thanks for joining us or watching this video. I'm here today to talk to you about transitioning from one school year to the other. We're going to talk about two different things. One is preparing the student for the transition, and then we're also going to talk about how we can support the teacher that will be receiving the student next school year. So with these two things in mind, we'll get started with talking about priming the student for the change. I know a lot of things can change over the summer. There might be a new teacher maybe and that you weren't anticipating the student having, but it's very important to prime that student for any changes, especially students with autism spectrum disorder and related disabilities. That sometimes when things are more consistent, then that is very helpful for them. So it's important to let them know when things will change, especially if they've been at a school or with a teacher for a few years. That change can be really difficult for them. So what things can you prepare them for? So think about what change will be occurring. Maybe they're moving to a different hallway with a different grade, or maybe they're moving to a different school. So think what visuals you can give them about what things will look like in this new setting. Maybe you don't know specifically what teacher they may have, but you know generally where the student will be going. Maybe you can visit the website together, or maybe you can screenshot some pictures of that school, or if it's within the same school and it's just a different part of the school, go take some pictures of what that hallway looks like, who are the people they may see there, where are the bathrooms. Just think about all the different changes and things that'll be different for that student. And presenting the information visually can be very helpful. So again, taking pictures, you could put it into a slideshow. You could maybe even make a little book for them that's laminated that they can look at over the summer, something like going to my new school. You could even do a video. Video modeling is a great way to prepare students for change. Go do a video. It's very easy to do with your phone. Go do a quick video tour of what the new area or the new school may look like. And again, if there's pictures online, maybe if you're not at that school, you can show them pictures online of what that school looks like, and then get an idea of, if there's people's picture online, this is who the principal will be, these are the front desk folks, all the PE teacher, anyone that they may interact with. And especially if you know them, it would be great if you could have them send some information about the school for you. So there's just a ton of ways that you can prime the student for the change, and it's really important to start now. And it would be great if you could go visit the school, even if students aren't there, maybe over the summer. I know sometimes that's not an option because they're doing work at the school or cleaning floors or whatever. But if you can go to the school and arrange a walkthrough, that would be great. But pictures are another really great way of preparing that student for the change. And you could even write it in the style of a social narrative. So I will be going to a new school next year. I will be going to the 9th grade. I will be changing classes. I will use a locker. Just whatever these changes are. Because there's a lot of big changes going on from school year to school year, especially if a student is moving from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school. The other avenue here is we need to make sure we're preparing the new teacher, the new educational team who will be receiving that student next school year. So I know for students with disabilities, oftentimes they'll have an IEP that will accompany them from one school or one teacher to another. But a lot of times you don't really get a feel for the student from the IEP. So it's important to be sure you're sharing any important information that you've learned over the school year, especially around communication support. What communication system does the student use? If the student's doesn't use verbal communication, if they use some sort of voice output device, a picture exchange system, make sure the new them. And any information that would help them support the student behaviorally and help them self-regulate. What are some things the student likes? What calms the student down? If the student uses maybe a token board, share that. It'd be great to have that behavior support be consistent from one setting to the next setting. And if there's any other things you've learned about that student, some things that just might help the student be comfortable, and also prepare the teacher so they don't have to learn again the things that you learned from working with that student over the past year. There's also some great transition forums we've developed with some of the districts that we've partnered with over the years. that have this information. What are the communication supports? What are the social supports? Who are some people that the student really likes that maybe we should consider making sure they sit next to, or they have the opportunity to eat lunch with? Just all that good information that would be so helpful for the student to have a smooth transition to the next school year, and to have those, social supports, maybe some behavior supports the student might need, sensory supports. Are there any items that are really important for that student to have so they feel calm and they can focus and be engaged in the classroom? So we'll be sharing those later on our Facebook page, so keep an eye out for those annual transition forms. But there's also other more informal ways you can share, even just reaching out if you have an idea of who the teacher might be or who that special education support person is, to say, like, I really want to have a conversation with the teacher for next year just to share this information so the student can have a smooth transition, because you know how anxiety provoking this change can be for some students. And so what we can do to help this change be as smooth as possible for the student, we need to prime them for the change as much as possible, and then prepare the new teacher. Share any information, share any supports that you have. Maybe there's a special visual schedule that the students use for the past year that's been very successful. Share that with the teacher, the exact one, right? That would be very helpful for the next school year, so the student is already familiar with that, and they the teacher can adapt it for the new setting. But just sharing any of those supports would be very helpful for the student. Oh, I see someone. Wow. So, hi Marie. She asked, there's a student moving to a different state. Any suggestions to help him? Oh, that's, I hate to hear students moving, but if there's any way you can get the information ahead of time of where he's going, if you know that, then you can say, you're moving to Alabama. I'm just going to say where I know, and then any information about that city. School, so then you can show them the website, show them pictures, and just prepare them as much as possible for what that might be like. Even better, if you have a connection there, you can find out who the teacher may be, or just generally some more information about the school or program. That would be very helpful. Some teachers have made for their students, or collaboration with the family, an All About Me book, and that gives a lot of information about the student that the student can then, we can share that information with the teacher for next year, the family can. And then that way the teacher has a good idea. These are some things I like. These are some things I do not like. These are some things that will help me calm down. And so it's a book that you can make in collaboration with the family and the student, and then they can take that to the next classroom. So again, you're helping prepare the teacher for the student, and also as much as you can help prepare the student for that change. Just get as much information as you can from the family about where that student's going, and then as much as you can. I know a lot of this is still, I don't know exactly where he's going, what school he might be in, or who his teacher will be, but as much as you can, get that information and share it with the student up front, because the more, and then share that with the family too. This is some of the supports I made, so they can review it with the student over the summer, because you don't want them to have to regress or to lose any of the skills that he's gained this year. So that is a really good question. Thanks for asking. Does anyone else have any questions? If so, please chime in and put them in the chat box. Or if you are watching this later and you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and we will come back and check this later. Again, thanks everyone for joining us, and I look forward to seeing your comments and hearing from you. And look for the annual transition plan that we'll be sharing later. Thank you.